Brand is a relationship of value to the customers. Brand actually defines you. It defines you in your business. Brands also signify your intent. So, what do you want to do? Branding also helps you to outdo competition. Branding also builds a lot of trust. Brands also open up new revenue channels. Branding also harness the power of emotions. And that is a sweet spot which most of the marketers actually aim for. Everything is versus the competition. So what's your customer acquisition rate versus competition? What's your market share? What is the sales lift? What is the ROI of distributed channels? All these actually help the company frame the entire structure of brand equity, and which helps us to measure what is the overall impact of the brand.
Welcome to the Stars of Learning podcast, where your host Jyoti Ji explores the minds of the thought leaders who have vast experience and in-depth knowledge in the learning industry. Now, over to your host Jyoti Ji.
Hello everyone, hearty welcome to season 2 of Stars of Learning podcast, and my name is Jyoti Ji and I'm your host for today. And each fortnight I interview the thought leaders in the learning industry who will share their best practices of learning. We will also discuss challenges, solutions, latest trends, tools, technology integration, leadership, and their journey in the learning. There has never been a better time for companies to invest in branding. You will agree that the focus is now on consumer experience, as consumers play an ever increasing role in managing their own brand, and metrics have shifted to value based assessments like user satisfaction. And as a result, the balance of influence in the brand consumer relationship has swung dramatically to the consumer, opening up unique branding opportunities that companies in the industry simply cannot afford to ignore. I'm sure we all believe that brands have the power not only to change individual lives but to change the world. How then can your brand stand out amongst the competition? So let's listen from an expert, Rohit Gulati, who I contacted through LinkedIn, and I was amazed with awesome job he does on healthcare, marketing and brand. So friends, I'm sure you all will agree that not all will get an opportunity to get to know the different domain of industry we work in, like education, banking, healthcare and many other. And what more easy is to get an expert to talk and share his experience, and that would exponentially save our time to know the subject. Today, we will have the conversation with one and only Rohit Gulati, who will share all his insight and his way of approach in branding and healthcare. Today, I'm glad to welcome my guest, Rohit Gulati, Head Strategy and Group Marketing at Karl Storz and Company, India and Subcontinent, who is a Senior Strategic Commercial Leader with a progressive experience of 14 years in the healthcare industry. Rohit has worked in leading healthcare MNCs like Debut Synthesis, a Johnson & Johnson company, MSD, Bosch and Lomb, and many other. And his project has been across sales, strategy, and marketing functions. He is passionate about building high-value brands to fuel rapid revenue growth for both established and startup companies. He possesses an entrepreneurial mindset and employs strong team leadership to create outsized impact with limited resources. As the head strategy, he is responsible for corporate strategy and marketing of emerging business in India and subcontinent. A thorough team player with a keen eye for detail, he blends his learning from digital sales and marketing to deliver results and is always in pursuit of excellence. So there is much more to his kitty, friends. He has got a lot of honors and awards. It's a Titan Award as an extra achiever at Hua Hin, and he has also got a Thailand Award for Excellence for conducting an international speakers series. He's also received a Rookie of the Year award for MSS Business, and Braveheart in the Business Excellence category, APAC Marketing Excellence Award, and many more into the kitty. So there's also a publication, MedTech, the keystone for Ayushman Bharat, is also under his kitty. So friends, you should not miss that publication. It has an immense topic about the healthcare related from Government of India perspective. You should definitely look at that. So today on this episode, friends, we shall explore masterclass in brand and healthcare marketing. Before we jump in, I would like you to take a pause and take a screenshot of this episode and share it as your Instagram story or any social media. And don't forget to tag me at Prajvita Knowledge. Without any further delay, let me welcome my guest, Rohit Gulati. Once again, welcome, Rohit, to Stars of Learning podcast. And I'm so happy and excited that you are joining me today.
Hi, Jyoti. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank you for getting me live through this podcast. And I'm honored to be speaking with you through this podcast.
Sure, my pleasure, Rohit. Rohit, before we start on this interesting topic on brand and healthcare, let's begin with a little background about yourself, as you have had an amazing journey in your career. So tell us what got you, where you are today.
So, Jyoti, I'm basically a healthcare professional. I did my bachelor's of pharmacy and a management degree around 20 years back. And I joined my healthcare career in sales, as most of us do. Moved on to a marketing role in a company called as Synthes. Today it has been acquired by Johnson & Johnson and it's called Synthes. With increasing responsibilities, I moved on from sales to marketing and worked with pharmaceutical giants like Merck Sharp and Dohme. Further, I went on to work with players like Bosch and Lomb and Becton Dickinson in capacities of head of marketing. I currently work at Karl Storz India Private Limited, which is basically an endoscopy giant. We are a German firm and market leaders in endoscopy across the world and in India. And I head their strategy and marketing function.
Great.
So all the way, I've built many brands and worked closely with world-class teams to impact patients in my healthcare journey.
Wonderful to have you here and to be talking about this topic, Rohit. And I see your career has been in this particular domain. Today, brand plays a key element in every walk of life, right? So, what's in a brand and what is your definition of a brand? And why do you say so?
Well, Jyoti, brands are most critical to any organization for that matter. Some organizations like Apple are brands in itself.
Right.
And most of these brands deliver many benefits to an organization you cannot even imagine. Some of them are like increased revenue and market share, increased customer loyalty. We can also look at increased stock prices and shareholders' value. And also it has the ability to attract and retain high quality employees. Brand is a relationship of value to the customers. It is more intangible and emotional. All in all, your brand is the sum total of your customers' perceptions, their notions, and their experiences.
Okay.
It is actually the face, personality, and values your business stands for, and everything in between.
Okay.
I remember a famous saying by David Ogilvy that all brands have a product, but not all products have a brand.
Yeah, wonderful to end that with that amazing note, Rohit. Now that your main USP is in marketing and healthcare, so what is the strategy in building big brands?
Jyoti, I would like to elucidate a framework which I generally use for building big brands. There are three parts to it. The first part talks about where do you want to play in the market. It encompasses many things like market sensing, identifying opportunities, the buying process, segmentation and targeting. The second part looks at how do you win in this market. So it's very important to develop that right offer and the go-to-market strategy when you are with your product. And the third, the most important, which sometimes most of the marketers forget in building big brands, is the measurement. So it's very important to measure success, and you should know where that success is coming from.
Okay.
So these three actually form the pillars of building big brands. This is actually a step-by-step methodology which we use in building big brands.
Okay.
And I actually tell most marketers to take out good time to build this approach. It's very important to understand the entire universe and your target audience, which is the most important thing, and which most marketers get it wrong because they are targeting a bigger size. It's very important to get that exact market audience which might be sometimes very, very niche as well, right?
Right.
To target your product. Understanding Indian strata and segmentation is actually very important, as you have limited resources, and it's important to utilize those resources to the best when you're in the market.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. I think with these three pillars, what you spoke about, Rohit, how do we convince or, what are your thoughts on how to enable leadership for brand focus on these three pillars?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jyoti. I think leadership is very important in creating that brand focus, and leadership should create an environment of continuous improvement, continuous innovation, and initiative. Leaders must actually foster a commitment from the team to embrace an innovative mindset, where each employee actually learns to apply the differences that exist between one each other, and they own their successes, right, so that the organization grows. At this point, I also would like to quote something which Elon Musk, who's the founder of SpaceX and Tesla Motors, we all know. He discussed his journey to reinvent the aerospace and the automotive industries, which we all know again. For Musk, it is actually the talent of his people and the trust he has in his team, and a combination of collaboration, grit, and resilience that keeps his vision alive.
Okay.
It's at the end, the ultimate role of leaders is to keep companies, industries, and economies alive, and that can happen only by innovation.
Okay.
So it's very important for leadership to give that direction.
Okay. It's a culture with innovation.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure. And I'm sure you are a recognized builder who have been successful in launching products, companies, and programs and delivering revenue growth for healthcare companies. And that's definitely a big feather on your cap, Rohit. What is the approach you use to measure the impact of brand in the organization? Because that is one of the pillar which you're talking, where is success, from where the success is coming from. Measurement is important, is what you're saying. So, what is your approach?
Yeah, I think this is the most important thing which we all get measured at leadership level. And let me talk to you about a concept called as brand equity here. It is actually brand equity, which is the reason why the world-renowned brands like Apple can command a premium price point. And it's estimated that Apple's brand value is close to $154 billion, or nearly 3 times its annual revenue, right? Which actually is the impact which it has created.
Okay.
Additionally, brand equity is driven by quality of the customer experience, including the branding and the marketing part. It's also built by emotions and impacts customer behavior. It's actually the reason why customers still line up to buy the latest iPhone,
Yeah.
outside Apple's store.
Yeah.
How do we measure this? There are various ways of measuring a brand equity today. One is a most popular way of doing it is the brand awareness. So how aware are people about the brand? You can look at various surveys, focus groups, amount of web traffic which you get on the website. You can look at very social media mentions, reviews about the brands and the products, right? So that is one particular metric. The second metric is preference metric. So how much do the customers prefer the brand, right? So that's the brand relevance, the emotional attachment to the brand, and finally the brand value. Brand value is basically nothing but a measure of how much your customers are willing to pay for your products and services. So that's a great measure. Most of us work in MNCs, and brand value is actually driving most of the things.
True.
The third and the most important metric is the financial metrics, and that is where a lot of the number crunching of the brand equity comes from. Right. So way to measure brand equity through related financial aspects include price premium. How much can you command over competition? You can also look at something which is today called as customer lifetime value. You would see a lot of books talk about customer lifetime value. This is a term which is being increasingly used today. And what is the rate of your sustained growth? Not growth, but sustained growth. So are you actually growing in a sustained manner? The third metric, another metric which I would like to point out here is the customer adoption of loyalty programs, and some of the sales on the promoted products. That is also one of the metrics of brand equity.
Okay.
Last but not the least is the competition. Everything is versus the competition. So what's your customer acquisition rate versus competition? What's your market share? What is the sales lift? What is the ROI of distributed channels? All these actually help the company frame the entire structure of brand equity, and which helps us to measure what is the overall impact of the brand.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great insight, Rohit, on the metrics. I think 5 heavy weighted points is what you have listed out here: brand awareness, preference metrics, financial, customer adoption, and the competition, which we cannot, we have to be mindful about. Yeah. So, Rohit, now we spoke about brand, we spoke about enabling the leadership and, how to bring into the culture. Can you explain to my listeners why of late the branding is become more important than ever?
Here again, I will give you 7 more points. Jyoti.
Sure.
Why branding is very important today than it was many years ago.
Right.
Today brands rule the world, and most of the startups want to become brands, and they want to rule the world as well. So one of the things, the first thing I would start off with is brand actually defines you. It defines you in your business, right? So that is very important. So basically your identity in the business. Brands also signify your intent. So what do you want to do? A brand would actually tell a lot about what the business is all about. Branding also helps you to outdo competition, right? So once you're a really strong brand, obviously you're outdoing competition. So branding is very, very important. It also helps your consumers know what to expect by making your products easy to choose.
Okay.
Right. So you are actually positioning your brand. The brand actually helps customers, position in the right manner. So you exactly know if you are choosing X brand versus a Y brand, of why do you want to choose that X brand, right? Branding also builds a lot of trust. So if you trust a brand, and you would know, Jyoti, that probably go into a shopper stop, or where there are many brands today, right? And you love a certain kind of brand because a certain kind of trust to that brand, right?
True.
So they build a lot of trust. Brands also open up new revenue channels, right? So you might launch some new brands in the market, and they suddenly open a new market channel for you. Right? And they are very, very important today because most companies are looking for new revenue channels today.
Yeah.
Branding also harness the power of emotions. We are basically connected to brands by the power of emotions, right?
Yeah.
It's an emotional connect,
True.
right?
True.
Which is sometimes not defined.
Yeah.
And that is a sweet spot which most of the marketers actually aim for.
Okay. Yeah. So, Rohit, with this concept, brand ruling the world, can you share any examples which has positive as well as negative brand image?
Sure. I think let's define brand image first. Brand image is basically the perception of the customers for the brand, and image of the brand actually develops not once, but it develops over a period of time, and it can be developed due to experiences and the interactions the customer has over the years.
True.
I'll give you one example of a very very strong brand which we all use in our daily lives. This is a brand called Colgate.
Yeah.
This is a very household brand, and we all are convinced with the satisfactory results which it has delivered over the years, right?
Yes.
So this brand is associated with a lot of trust, right? And that is why there's a lot of strong image of this brand. Now there are many negative brands in the market, and one of the examples which I can recall was a brand named as Ugly Drinks. Now, this was a healthy alternate to sugar drinks, but if you see the name as Ugly Drinks, the name of the brand actually created a negative perception. In fact, later the company worked on defined the topic as that it's a healthy brand, it doesn't mean boring, and they actually revamped the entire design and improved it. So it can actually impact the profitability of the company, right? So it's very important to actually look at the reasons behind which negative brand publicity can happen.
Yeah.
And it can be anything, it can be the brand name. In this case, it was the brand name. It can be the packaging. It can be the way of communication with the customers. It can be anything. Similarly, in healthcare as well, you can develop a lot of brands with a lot of positive image. And sometimes the brand name, if you choose wrong, it can go in a very, very wrong space. If you understand, if you look at some brands in healthcare, you would remember their names because they're very catchy.
Yes.
And most of the doctors remember their names when they are prescribing to their patients. So that's why the marketeers take a lot of time to think of the right kind of brand name, so that when the doctor starts remembering about the brand, he can easily remember it and put it down on the prescription and give it to the patient.
Okay, sure. So, Rohit, in continuation to that, you were a panel recently at a World Marketing Congress conference in Mumbai. Can you share some nuggets, on how to transform and empower that marketing thing to drive change and bring in that innovation? I mean, what would be the ideal way you propose?
Sure, Jyoti. We are getting into an era of what I call as MarTech. That means technology-driven marketing. And a lot has been also said about purposeful marketing, which is today's more stronger than ever before. If your marketers cannot drive growth through a terminology called as growth hacking, and this term is widely used nowadays to get new customers and new technology as leverage for innovation. If the marketers today cannot use some of the technologies like AR, VR, and blockchains, they would not be able to bring about a huge transformation, right? So we need to empower our marketing teams and business teams today with necessary skills and these MarTech tools.
So I will come back to you on the AR VR question a little later time, Rohit. But then in continuation, what is futuristic marketing, and what are key future technology trends? And I totally understand this question itself will be an episode for us and much more maybe. But please help me, my listeners, to understand what are these trends they are talking about, futuristic marketing and key future technology trends, with some of your examples for our listeners to easy to connect.
Sure. I'll talk about some of the emerging technologies, which have actually emerged as we talk. But I think by 2020, they'll be very, very strong. And some of them are Internet of Things, you must have definitely heard of.
Yes, IoT.
We have something, yes. We have been talking about Internet of Things for quite some time now. And although the technology is very, very strong, and this is called as an emerging technology. It has not totally emerged, and there are a lot of use cases. Another one is AR and VR, so augmented reality and virtual reality. The next one is blockchain, and blockchain is the most promising technology today talked about. There's something also called as 3D printing, and you must have seen drones as a technology as
Right.
well. In healthcare, we talk a lot about the robotics. So that is again a very, very strong technology which is replacing surgeons and hospitals at most of the places.
Yeah. In fact, there's a restaurant in Bangalore with robots serving the food, completely
Absolutely.
AI driven hotel, and it was a wonderful experience. So,
Yes.
so thanks, Rohit. I think you gave a quick view about the what market is and what future technology would look like for my listeners. That's an awesome info, I would say, you would have shared here. Now, let's shift the gear to healthcare, since your background has been throughout in the healthcare and being head of strategy and marketing and creating that big brands in MNCs. What is the strategy you have applied, Rohit, in business practice or when working with the marketing team?
Sure, Jyoti. The first thing which we look at is making their mindset entrepreneurial. Only if they're entrepreneurial, they'll be able to think from a wide perspective. Also, we look at building up on brand differentiation and scaling up. So, how do you look at what are your brand differentiation factors and what are the ways you can scale up your brand? We also ask them to challenge the status quo. So we look at insight development from the market, and we then ask them that why don't you challenge what's happening in the market and look at ways in which you can make your strategy work in the market. So always work with the end in the mind. So what is your end objective, right? And then probably frame up your strategy. And there are various frameworks as we talked about. You can define a set of working variables as well. We also give them some business analytical tools to work on.
Okay.
Scenario building is very important in healthcare because scenarios can change very fast. We are in a very, very fast-paced business environment in healthcare where regulatory factors change, the environmental factors changed. So regulatory and environment are two most important things which we talk to the marketeers, that you keep that in mind and put the customer at the center and then make all your strategies around it. We also tell them to focus on ROI towards the end. Because everything depends upon the return of investment.
True.
So I think these are some of the things which we keep them right in the beginning when they're making on their brand plans.
Yeah, from the entrepreneurial to ROI, I think that's a great strategy, Rohit. Thanks for sharing this nuggets. Then, how do one understand various segments or a value chain of healthcare in India, Rohit?
I think that's the most difficult part, The healthcare market actually is expected to reach $320 billion by 2025.
Okay.
And is expected to grow with a CAGR of 12%. Now, there are various segments, Jyoti, in the market. The biggest one is, of course, the pharmaceutical segment. You have the devices segment. You have the diagnostics segment. The best way which I have seen to understand each segment is, of course, having worked in those sectors, because as an outsider, it's like a vast ocean. So otherwise, I advise people to read a lot. And there is a great book where you can understand about the various segments. And this book is written by an author called as Lawton Robert Burns. And the book is called An Overview of Value Chain, Indian Value Chain. I would certainly ask the people listening to this podcast to actually go through this. This gives you an immense detail about the various segments and the way healthcare in India has evolved and is moving ahead.
Okay.
I would also talk about some of the online MOOCs. Today online MOOCs have become very popular.
Yes.
And
that is disrupting our learning and development function too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
these online MOOCs are actually disrupting quite a bit, and it's the right way in which people can actually self-learn and upskill.
Yeah.
The last most important thing I tell most people is that start with sales. If you want to understand segments, you need to start visiting these hospitals. India is not about Fortis and Apollo and Max. India is all about those standalone hospitals in a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city. That is where you actually understand the healthcare segments.
Yeah, very true. So that's a great insight, Rohit. And you have been recognized as one of Asia's top 50 brand leader. And my question to you is how to become a successful marketer in healthcare and how to make a customer centric brand plan for your healthcare product.
Sure. Uh, Jyoti, to become a successful marketer in healthcare, as I talked about sales, you need to start from sales. Now, that's number one. You cannot get inside your office and start making marketing strategies without having done sales. So I would say that's the first thing. You start with the basics and start with sales. Once you know the basics, once you know how the pharmaceuticals work and the devices work, and the basic principles differ quite a bit. Once you have known that, then we talk to them about you should know how to demonstrate value. Now, if you are working in an MNC, it's very, very important to make a value proposition of a product. And a lot revolves around that. And a lot also revolves around the economical model of the brand, the total cost of ownership. If you are able to sell this to a doctor, to a purchase guy, to the head of the administration of a hospital, you can sell the brand, right? So because everybody wants to ask is what is in it for me. So every hospital asks is that if this is a very good brand and this is going to benefit the patient, can it come at a good price? What is the overall value that it provides? How does it differentiate from competition, right? So they will ask many questions, and if you have a strong value of the product, I think it sells.
Okay.
Then we also talk about that the marketer should have worked on the product life cycle of the product at all stages. There are various stages of a product life cycle, Jyoti. So you have the stage at which the product is launched, and there's a growth stage, and there is a stage at which it plateaus, and then there's a decline stage. So if you have actually seen the entire product life cycle, only then you can appreciate the brand, and you can actually look at what you want to do when it probably is at a decline stage. Otherwise, most marketeers have actually worked very early in the product life cycle. They haven't seen a product decline.
Okay.
Actually, product decline is much more tougher to handle. So it's very important for them to actually look at all stages. They should have launched a few products, obviously, and should know competition well, should know concepts like game theory, etc. Should have worked on brand plan process, which is basically a 3 to 5 year process. They should also know how to run campaigns and measure them. They should also know how to make a differentiated program in a cluttered market, as we call it today. And some of the tools for analytics and measurement they should know. They should also know how to manage internal stakeholders. It's very, very important because you're dealing with sales teams, you're dealing with supply, regulatory teams. It's very important for a marketer to actually get along with these teams internally before you finally launch a product. So I think these are some of the things which actually can make a marketer very successful.
Okay. I'm sure when you got this award, it would have been a fantastic moment being a top 50 brand leader amongst Asia.
Yes, it was a great feeling. I think I went to Singapore to receive this award, and it was actually a great feeling to represent India.
Okay, wonderful. In fact, I was also one of the recipients to receive top 100 Asia's most innovative training and development leader last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so moving on, Rohit, I think I paused you when you were talking about the AI and the VR and the blockchain. So these are the key future technology trends. So, do you want to give more insight to my listeners how these are going to play in the brand context or the healthcare context?
Sure, Jyoti. I think we can talk directly on healthcare here. There's VR, AR, and AI, and even blockchain. They actually have a huge role in healthcare. Let me talk about blockchain first. You must have heard about the personal healthcare record management.
Right.
Now, that is a big area where blockchain is currently getting employed. And there are a lot of companies in India, a lot of startups which are actually working in that area. Then you have an area called as healthcare analytics. And blockchain is also currently getting utilized in a lot of pharma supply chain. So there are a lot of use cases, as they call, for blockchain and pharma supply chain. Uh, Blockchain can also be used in knowing counterfeiting of drugs. We generally do not come to know otherwise in a cluttered market that which drug, after even it has passed quality tests, is good, bad. So blockchain can actually keep a tap on counterfeiting of drugs.
Okay.
In fact, one area which Novartis used was on a VR. So Novartis recently worked with some of the app developers, and they developed an amplified robot to create a VR smartphone app. So that's where VR has been recently used by Novartis. I'll also talk about a little bit which Glaxo is doing. Glaxo launched a campaign called as Migraine Experience, which uses 360-degree VR technology. It helps them to raise awareness about migraine sufferers in India. This was again a technology which has helped them raise awareness about migraine. And GE, a very popular healthcare brand, has introduced virtual reality training for healthcare technology management professionals. So these technologies can actually help a lot in training the next generation of paramedics and doctors as well.
That's a wonderful insight, Rohit. So, Rohit, these key future technology trends are already in the market. How to bring in this digital transformation in companies and basics of digital to be successful in healthcare? I know you spoke about GE, Glaxo, and all that, but how do you bring that transformation in the companies?
Sure, Jyoti. Digital transformation actually is a very, very big term. Some organizations think that making an application,
Yeah.
makes them digitally transform. No, right? So it's all about leveraging what we call as their big data or the lot of data available in the company. How do you leverage that? So I'll break it down into a three-part process.
Okay.
The first part is technology transformation, which I call it as digitization. The second part is process transformation, which is automation. So automating most of the processes. And the third and the last important part is the business transformation. That is where you maximize your value. And if you see in all the three parts, people form a very important part. So if people are not able to change in a digital environment today, all these three parts will not work. Right. So I always talk about that people actually form the center point of any digital transformation.
Okay.
So that is in short about digital transformation. And as I told you, this is a very, very vast topic.
True.
And today we can see organizations having chief digital officers or chief digital transformation officers who work over a time period of 3 to 5 years to actually digitally transform a company.
Right. Yeah. Making it, it's a longer term goal, I would say, but it's an important strategic activity for any organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I am able to connect with the 3 points what you told on the technology, business transformation, and automation. We also work on a simple solution called, from the HR point, something which you are doing mundane day-to-day work and routine activities. We want to get automated, digitized, so you more move into that digital mode.
Yes, yes, the future is digital, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
and that is where most of the businesses are trying to move.
So definitely, with all the transformation and the market, and in fact, enabling the employee to moving up the value chain, what we can't miss is the management perspective, Rohit. Understanding these medical devices and other segments in healthcare, and the business models deploying technology, to deliver effective healthcare. How do you tackle this?
Well, effective use of technology is actually the core of medical technology today. So, how do you effectively use this technology to your benefit? That's very, very important because technology should enable optimal outcomes to patients. And finally, it should be cost efficient.
Okay.
We have various models in India which are cost efficient. I can give you one example, which is a very, very famous model in India and it's doing really, really well, which is the Arvind Eye model.
Okay.
This Arvind Eye model uses technology as well, and it's the most cost efficient model. It is actually cost efficient because it is a self-sustaining model, and a lot of companies have actually tried to model the Arvind model, and even there's another hospital called as Narayan Health, right, who is actually also trying to model in the same way. India, as I mentioned, is not only about Apollo, Fortis, and Max,
Right.
but a large part of it is residing in standalone hospitals in Tier 2 and Tier 3. And technology should actually be able to help provide doctors with the tools to enable an efficient surgery at an efficient cost. Now, one of the things which the Modi government has launched in a very effective manner is the Ayushman Bharat, which is a step in that direction,
Okay.
which is a scheme for universal healthcare. Right. So it's an insurance scheme which provides insurance for people who are below the poverty line. I think that's a good step towards that direction, and I think this is going to expand the way healthcare can actually increase its reach in Tier 2 and Tier 3. And new technologies, as I mentioned, are introduced every year, and technologies actually become obsolete very, very fast. So it's actually important that most technologies which get launched in the market are actually enabling the patient. And I think that they should also look at price points when they're launching products, because India finally is a price sensitive market.
Right. Yeah. So definitely, with digital mindset, and we need to scale. You did talk about the tools, Rohit. So, which can help us perform our role. So, what are the tools one has to use for branding or a healthcare during rollout or planning? What would be the one you would recommend?
Jyoti, there are many tools, available for marketers today. Some of the marketer tools which they can use for rollout and planning are the ever famous BCG metrics. There's also a tool called as McKinsey feasibility model and Ansof's metrics. What we also encourage them is to do a brand planning exercise for 3 to 5 years. That actually helps them to understand how the environment will look like, how things will change in the next 3 to 5 years. And most importantly, built upon any metric should be built upon keeping the customer in the center. So if you have the customer in the center and you have the right matrices around it, you will definitely be very successful in your rollout.
Okay. So now we understand the importance of building big brands in the healthcare with all the strategy tools and the techniques what you have shared. Can you share any one example or a case study for my listeners to understand, Rohit, what goes into it and how one has to be mindful about?
Yeah. So you're talking about the big brands, right?
Right.
So one strategy which we can actually use to build big brands is the strategy called as Blue Ocean. Now, Blue Ocean is a great way to build big brands. It's actually a framework to break away from competition, and you can create a blue ocean for yourself and you can be there for a limited period of time. Blue oceans are generally for limited period of time because most of the competition will catch you after some time. But that limited period of time in the market you have is totally a monopoly for yourself. I'll give an example here of Virgin Atlantic, which is a famous airline of the US. When it got launched, it eliminated the first class and they introduced something called as business class. At that time, nobody knew business class, right? So it was a comfort for the first time. They also reduced one thing. They also reduced the number of routes.
Okay.
And they created ground transport, right? So you should know what to eliminate and what to create. Because you have limited resources. Right. So you should know what to cut down and what to create so as to actually create a blue ocean for yourself. From a healthcare industry perspective, there have been many brands which have actually created blue oceans. I'll give you a brand called as Januvia. Now, this brand is actually a brand from Merck Sharp and Dohme, and I've seen it very, very closely. This was launched in the anti-diabetic market, and it was a novel molecule. The way it was positioned, the way the communication was done around this branding, it actually created a blue ocean for itself for quite some period of time, and it became, I remember, 100 crore brand in less than 2 years' time.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a great insight, Rohit. So, Rohit, I'm in the talent development phase and I'm keen to know what would be the learning strategy as the market is so disruptive, right? How do you focus on your skills?
Well, I think this is a great question, Jyoti. Continuous learning and upskilling is the key today. It's very important to know the technology and skills that will be required in 2020 and probably beyond. Some of the platforms which I advise a lot of people in the learning and development space is platforms such as EDX and Coursera.
Okay.
You would know them.
Yes,
right?
yes.
They provide a vast amount of information and a lot of their courses are free.
True.
Right. So I would recommend that you go there, and there are self-paced and self-learning platforms. There is also an Indian platform, Udemy, which has been launched. I think it has various courses as well.
Yes.
Now, LinkedIn has an arm called as LinkedIn Learning. That is also pretty popular for people probably who have taken the LinkedIn Premium. It comes along. So I think that's a great platform to learn from. So there are various executive platforms like these which are available, which you can use in your free time on your weekends to actually upgrade yourself.
Okay.
And you can probably find everything you want to learn today.
Okay. Wonderful. So, Rohit, your perspective on creating a learning culture. How do you partner with L&D function to scale in your domain?
Yeah. So, Jyoti, first of all, you need to create a platform for company learning and learning on the go.
Yeah.
I would say, classroom and formal training is the training of the past.
Yes.
Today, people want to learn on the go.
Right.
And people want to use technology to learn on the go. So people want to use something like as Zoom or Meetup.
Yeah.
They want to connect with people, deliver through webinars,
True.
I think that's the way it's going to be. People don't want to learn at their laptops today. People want to learn as they move between jobs or as they move during, at the time when they are commuting in the morning or in the evening. And they want to use online tools. In fact, I tell a lot of people that even emails would be something of the past, right? And people would not learn on their desktops. People would actually learn on their phones.
True. Yeah. I don't know. Very soon we may bring your own device kind of a thing and everything on mobile.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure. And I'm sure there would be a lot of risk also, right, Rohit, predicting marketing strategy and placing your brand rightfully. I know you did talk about few cases, but then I want to hear from you. What are the challenges one can encounter in in any of the sector or a healthcare, you want to quote any of the examples. How did you tackle it or to overcome those challenges?
I think, Jyoti, that's a great question, and this is something which we talk quite a bit and actually takes away a lot of our leadership time as well.
Hmm.
In the healthcare sector today, the medical devices are actually undergoing a huge regulation, and new rules have recently come into place. It's important to understand how these challenges will impact your brand and your company over both short term and long term. So it's important to track and forecast these challenges in your sector.
Okay.
Most of the changes actually affect the entire organization in medical devices. I'll give you some examples, such as the price reduction happened in stents and knee implants recently, which actually impacted a lot of companies dealing with these products, and they are now getting regulated as part of medical devices by an organization called as CDSCO. Hence, it's important actually to start doing scenario building of how your company will actually look like in the next few years, and that is exercise which most of us actually are doing currently, because the environment is so volatile and ever changing. So it's not easy as it sounds, Jyoti, and it requires actually a lot of thinking across the entire leadership team.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that would have been such a tremendous experience. Even in fact, even I experienced when for my dad when I had to put a stent, it was like huge, and now I think it is a good reach for all the people.
Yes, yes.
So, is there a benchmark, Rohit, which one can refer and be compliant and gear up in this domain?
Jyoti, in today's VUCA environment, or as they call it, the volatile, uncertain, complex environment,
Yeah.
there are no benchmarks.
Okay.
As there are no models which are truly efficient, and companies actually have a short span. Most companies have a short span, right?
Yeah.
Because the models are changing so fast, the environment is changing so fast. So I would not say that you should follow a certain benchmark today. And is there if you ask me, is there any ideal benchmark which you can refer to? There is none today.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think you gave one reference of McKinsey report and BCG metrics also. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, benchmarking is something you should not be doing. It's like very dynamic. The market is
Absolutely.
dynamic is what
There are
you're.
tools, as you mentioned, these are some of the tools which I mentioned. But I think benchmarking against something which is established and trying to copy it will not work for you, number one. And plus, your environment keeps changing so fast. So it's very difficult to look at somebody and trying to emulate or trying to strategize in the same way. It generally doesn't work.
Sure, sure. So, Rohit, how to become a successful marketer and how to make a customer centric brand plan for any of the product? Any insights on
Well,
this?
yes, I think, Jyoti, the way to become a successful marketer are many, and it's nobody becomes successful overnight.
Yes,
Obviously, you have to toil through the years to become a successful marketer, so to be called a successful marketer.
right. The
So
length and
one of
breadth.
the things, length and breadth is used.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things which I always talk about to most marketers, that keep your basics very strong. Once your basics is strong, you can build upon marketing concepts, you can build upon tools, you can build upon digital concepts which are now coming in. So I think basics should be very, very clear. Then focus on ROI.
Okay.
Most marketers sometimes do not focus on ROI, the return on investment, right? Whether it is when they're making their campaigns, their plans, they are more focused on the content, the way they're going to roll it out, but they are not focused on the return on investment, which is very important.
Right.
The third thing which I tell them is keep customers at the center when you're making your plans. So how will the customer look at your brand, look at the campaign, right? Or purchase from you? That is the most important thing. How would they react? What is the emotional connect?
Okay.
The fourth one is execution. A lot of marketers focus on strategy, but when it comes to execution, they are like 20%, 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So execution is the most important thing for me. You can have a good strategy, but if it is not executed well, you can fall flat.
Hmm. Okay.
And the future of marketing is customer experience. So focus on building a good experience for the customer. And I think keeping these five things in mind, you should be home.
Yeah. Well grounded points, Rohit. We are coming to an end of an interview of this subject. Okay. I just want to understand from you, is there anything we are leaving out here that needs to be addressed to my listeners? Anything?
I think you've covered a vast majority of the topic in a very, very short span of time. Uh, so I think kudos to you, and this podcast will be able to actually deliver a lot about healthcare brands and the way marketers should look at the business environment today.
Yeah, I think, in fact, even I had not ventured into healthcare domain, but I got a great insight, Rohit. But Rohit, it's not over yet, the interview. We have planned some specific super questions to know about our leaders on my podcast who
Wow.
come on Stars of Learning podcast. And these are powerful questions targeted to know about you, which will influence my listeners to engage, empower, and enlighten. And that's the mission of my podcast too. Are you ready?
Yes, I think this looks like a shoot up of questions, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, please go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, Rohit, my first powerful question to you is, according to you, what is the star moment?
Star moment. Okay. So, Jyoti, having touched somebody's life and inspiring others is actually a star moment for me.
Okay. And what inspires you to do everything that you do today?
Making a difference to my patients through our products, through our services every day inspires me. And to be able to put a smile on somebody's face and save a life through our products also inspires me a bit.
Wonderful. And if you have owned the company, what's one thing that you would do differently in learning?
Well, learning is a way of life, and learning on the go is today's mantra. So, online rather than classroom, platforms such as QNet, ZozoDay, emails are history. I would actually replace everything in the classroom by online virtual platforms and learning and development to be self paced rather than forced upon.
Okay. And what are the three most important things you would like to accomplish right now?
One of the things out of the three which I would like to accomplish is from a leadership perspective is what I call as servant leadership.
Okay.
There are a lot of books written around it, and I am very passionate about this topic. The second thing is giving back to the society through my brand workshops.
Okay.
And three is I'm passionate about traveling. So I travel quite a bit and I love traveling. So these are three things.
Wonderful. And if it is servant leadership, then you should not miss my episode number 12 and 13. I'm talking to Dr. Madana Kumar from UST Global. He's a servant leadership evangelist, and he's given a wonderful insight about servant leadership, the journey, as well as how he has implemented that in his company, UST Global. So it's a two perspective I have brought in the two episode. I would urge you if you can listen to that podcast.
Absolutely. I would love to hear that.
Sure. And if I may ask you, what are your strengths, Rohit?
Uh,
Definitely not an interview question, but
yeah, I wouldn't call them strength, but I think something which I'm passionate about is I love inspiring others. I'm a committed professional and I'm a very passionate professional. I think some of the things which I also look at very closely is my decision making capabilities. I want to make decisions pretty fast. I don't want to linger on for long. I also love delegation and empowerment of my teams. And some of the other things are to do with innovation and martech, because that's where I am. And last but not the least is empathy. I think as leaders we need to be empathetic.
Right. And what's the best book you have read this year or any time you want to recommend to my listeners? I know you have
I think there's
recommended
a
a couple
great
of books already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, there's a book which I read recently. In fact, it impacted me so much that there's a case that actually purchased a lot of copies of that book and gave it to my entire marketing team.
Okay.
This book is called as Catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Catalyst is written by Mr. Chandramouli,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact this was his first book. There's a second book which has come out, and this book is like a guide for your career. It's like a ready reckoner for your career, and I would certainly urge everybody to read this book, whoever can get hold of. You can actually change the way you look at your career by reading this book. And one thing which this book talks about, which I clearly remember, is the experience. It talks about that experience is not the number of years you have spent in an organization, but actually the learning cycles which you are part of. So somebody who is, say, 2 years experienced in an organization might be more experienced than a 10-year-old guy who has spent 10 years in the organization but has not really learned something new.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a wonderful preview you have given about the book. Thanks for that, Rohit. Moving on, what are the characteristics of the best boss or a role model, or it could be a mentor or a coach you ever had, and what made that person great for you?
Yeah, I think I had many role models and mentors in my life, and some of them, which I clearly remember, they challenge status quo. One of things which I clearly remember is that they challenge status quo. Communication was a key, so they communicated and recommunicated upon the strategy continuously. They also focused a lot about team building and camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
That is very important when you actually fail as a business or you actually win as a business. That camaraderie is very, very important. And they used to show how things are done. So as they talk about lead by example, and for them people were very important than business. So what they always told us, and what I've always learned, is that you take care of the people and people take care of the business,
Yeah,
and it's never the other way around.
true.
So I think that has stuck to me, and my way of leading team is also in the same way.
Wow, wonderful. So, Rohit, are there any tools that you use on a daily basis to be a better you?
Uh, well, there are a lot of tools, but some of the tools which I use on a daily basis, not on a daily basis, but probably on a on and off basis, is I read a lot.
Okay.
I probably read a lot, and that helps me a lot to chat up with teams on various topics. So that helps me quite a bit. And the second one is I skim a lot of healthcare news on social media.
Hmm.
So if you can actually target social media to your benefit, and I certainly think you can target, you can get a lot of healthcare news which is out there on social media. Well, to relax, otherwise I generally de-stress on weekends and play some mind games to relax. So I think reading is something, and I do quite a bit.
Okay. So, in continuation, are there any habit you are practicing which has made you successful in whatever you do?
I think there are very simple mantras to this question, which is work hard, party harder, and read a lot. Read mostly. You can read obviously varied topics, and I would not suggest people to actually read only management books or stick to. You should actually go ahead and read a lot of literature as well, right? And I'm very passionate about healthcare, so I would suggest you should read little bit about healthcare wherever you can get it from.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are some of the things as an habit which you should do over and over.
Okay, sure. So, Rohit, we have come to an end of this interview, and before that, I have one more question left for you. And before I ask you that question, how can people get in touch with you to get more insight, collaborate, or where can they reach out to you?
There are few places which they can reach out to me. Of course, they can reach out to me, number one, through my mobile number, which is available on LinkedIn. And second is LinkedIn as a platform. So a lot of people actually reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
The third and most important place is I go to a lot of B schools.
Okay.
I actually speak on brand management in healthcare in a lot of B schools, I think. And if you are a student and want to learn about healthcare, or you want to connect with me, you can attend some of the talks which I actually give in most of the B schools, where you can just drop in, you can drop me a message, I can invite you to my talk.
Okay, wonderful. On a closing note and that last question, Rohit, your advice for those who want to accelerate their career in marketing or healthcare, and are there any core skills you want to recommend?
As I mentioned earlier, I would reiterate what I mentioned probably a little earlier, which is focus on basics. If your basics are great, you can actually become a really good marketer, and be passionate about marketing, number one, and probably healthcare. If healthcare is your area of growth and healthcare is something which you're really passionate about, you should make your career in this sector. For me, I'm happy that I can actually give a smile to a patient by the end of the day, or I've touched somebody's life by the end of the day. So that's my motivator, that's my purpose. So I hope you have a great purpose in your career and you are passionate about it. Also, you should look at building something new, and do not try to follow others or emulate others. Try to work on models which have not been worked on. Try to work on strategies which none of the marketers currently have actually done. Try to use something new which nobody has tested before.
Okay.
And last but not the least is compete with yourself every day and not others.
That's an amazing and great insight, Rohit. So, guys, all the links and resources which we have discussed in this episode will be made available in my show notes page of my podcast, Stars of Learning, and also on my website, prajvitaknowledge.com. That is PRAJVITA knowledge.com. I list out all the conversation in my podcast description for your quick reference. Thank you so much, Rohit, for being on this show, Stars of Learning podcast, and sharing all your wisdom about brand and healthcare. I really enjoyed it, and it was immensely useful insight, and which I had not ventured, and it was a great learning to me. And I'm sure my listeners will also enjoy it, starting from, the metrics you brought in, the brands concept, and all the small nitty-gritty. It's like, start with the sale, keep an end in the mind, ROI towards the end. A lot of nuggets you have shared, and I really enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. I think it was great talking to you through this podcast, and I'm very sure that through this podcast we'll be able to give more knowledge to the youngsters.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate your time, Rohit. Thank you. So, friends, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rohit. If you have got any learning or motivated hearing to Rohit, then make sure you do share this podcast with your friends and post it on all social media. And do let your friends know about this amazing information you have learned, and let this piece of information help many others to engage, enlighten, and empower. All my wonderful listeners, thank you so much for your patience and tuning into this show. And I'm always grateful to everyone who tune in, who subscribes and leave a review for our podcast. And by the way, if you have not done that yet, that would mean a world to me. So head over iTunes and take a minute to write a quick review, and it will help our podcast grow. And I really appreciate your support. Watch out for my next podcast where I will be talking to yet another interesting speaker. Until then, bye for now. Take good care of yourself and go out and do something engaging, enlightening, and empowering. Thank you.